How can darkness, tragedy, and horror be beautiful? Not just beautiful in a philosophical sense, but beautiful in a literal, objective one. For example, can a battlefield full of dead soldiers and feasting crows be presented in a way that you can't help but say, yes, despite being a horrible sight, it has a strange sense of beauty to it. They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that it's objective, and that is true. We all have different tastes, standards, and often view art through a series of cultural lenses. But at the same time, there are things that all of us would consider beautiful and artful, regardless of our cultural background or taste in art. Seeing these depictions of ancient Greek mythology, for example, would anyone really claim or even be able to claim that they are ugly? No, because some things are factually beautiful. A Plague Tale Innocence is a very interesting game because, in my opinion, it's one of a select few games that managed to fall under the category of artful video games. What do I mean when I say artful video games? Well, to me, an artful video game is a game that visually is so incredibly stunning, you could easily compare it to a painting of a mostly, but not exclusively, Western-styled era such as classical, neoclassical, baroque, etc. Even some modernist styles such as pop art. Note that this is all my personal opinion. What other games would fall under this category? The entire BioShock series, the Dishonored games, Deathloop, the Batman Arkham series, Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, Far Cry 5, the Metro games, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and of course, A Plague Tale Innocence. Now please note, there are other games that I would consider to be art, and the ones that I named are simply examples to make what I'm trying to say more understandable and relatable, especially for those that have played all of them or some of them. I also want to point out that the games I just mentioned made my list because of their visual style and uniqueness, not because of the stories or gameplay. Not all of them might have amazing stories or great gameplay, but in my opinion, all of them are visually stunning and highly creative. I do not think that all video games are art. The process of making them is surely artful, yes, but from a pure visual standpoint, a lot of video games are not creative or pleasing to the eye. They won't make you stare at the screen or the virtual scenery. There are games such as Fortnite that I would not consider to be artful. They don't make me stop in awe and take a moment to soak in the visuals. A Plague Tale Innocence manages to portray a world of darkness and horror that is stunning and beautiful, but also disgusting and morbid. This is not an easy task to do. The story of A Plague Tale Innocence is emotional and dark, something you could easily imagine to have originated from the mind of George R.R. Martin. If you've read or watched Game of Thrones, then this game will remind you of it in terms of setting, visuals, and story. It follows Amicia and Hugo de Rune during the 100 Years' War, two French children of a wealthy lord's family that find their world turned upside down when the Inquisition arrives and destroys everything they own. To make matters worse, a horrible and mysterious plague is ravaging the countryside and whole cities, killing people, livestock, and destroying everything in its path. The story is well acted, and the voice actors really did a great job. Portraying emotions purely using your voice is a hard thing to do, and when done right, can have a huge impact on a video game. Adding to the great job the voice actors did, the developers of A Plague Tale managed to create great-looking character models with facial animations that are well made during cutscenes. You can see emotions of anger, grief, sadness, and shock on their faces, which is not something I'd say most games can claim. In most games, characters are either completely expressionless, perfect poker players, or occasionally raise their eyebrows. And I'm not talking about old games here. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a recent game with a much bigger budget than A Plague Tale, yet character interactions in Valhalla look stiff and unbelievable. which is sad and strange because its predecessors, Origins and Odyssey, had great facial animations. When a studio with a lower budget manages to put so much attention and care into a game, I always find myself respecting them more than big studios with tons of money that now seem to care more about loot boxes or selling you useless skins. Amicia is the main playable character, and it's her job to take care of her little brother Hugo. At the beginning of the game, their relationship is a bit distant and Amicia treats Hugo almost coldly. But as the game goes on, this changes. Since you're together most of the time and have to work together when accomplishing different tasks, you start bonding and getting used to each other. This results in a lot of great and touching moments, like this one for example.
Amicia? I'm sorry. I'm sick.
No.
Amicia starts out as a helpless, naive girl, and over the course of the story evolves and matures into a person knowing how to survive and handle difficult life and death situations. One of the best examples of this would be a confrontation in a city, where she is forced to kill a person to save her and her brother. She has never killed anyone before that, she has no combat experience, and the thought of murder probably never crossed her mind. Murder is a sin to her that stains your soul, regardless of the circumstances it happens in. So when she kills her first enemy, her reaction is pure horror. She can't believe what just happened and begs for forgiveness. Most games will let the main character slaughter his way through hordes of enemies, not once stopping and asking himself, are all these corpses I walk over really necessary? Am I still one of the good guys? Which is not to say that this needs to happen or that the player should even care. We are killing non-existent NPCs at the end of the day. But it's interesting how casual murder in video games has become, to a point where we have dedicated murder sandboxes like Hitman that let us kill our targets in some of the most creative and hilarious ways. This is not a critique of murder in video games, but an interesting observation. While there is no system of consequences in A Plague Tale, you will definitely notice how all the killing takes a toll on Amicia, to a point where she will have to walk through hell to survive. There are generally a lot of apocalyptic moments in this game that remind you of the biblical revelations, visions of hell, paintings of angels fighting demons and death walking the streets in the form of a deadly plague of sickness and rats. It's an emotional and touching tale of a brother and a sister having to survive unthinkable horrors. A Plague Tale Innocence is a story-driven game first and foremost. The story is the main attraction of this game. However, contrary to what a lot of people claim, it's not a walking simulator. The gameplay is not highly original or innovative, but it's fun and engaging, even if slightly repetitive towards the later half of the game. It mostly consists of you having to hide from enemies, distract them or kill them using your slingshot. The slingshot you carry can be upgraded along with a bunch of other equipment. You can upgrade your aim, the amount of ammunition you carry in your pouch, or your clothes. The sling can use different sorts of ammunition such as stones, flammable objects or explosives. Over the course of the story, you will unlock more substances that you can use to create new throwables that will help you out a lot. The rats are one of the biggest dangers and they can be very intimidating and overwhelming because there are thousands of them swarming out of the ground or even through thick walls, devouring every living thing on their way within seconds. They remind me a lot of the first two Mummy movies. The only thing they fear is fire, and you best hope the fire around you will never extinguish while these rats are near. Honestly, these threats, especially early on in the game, where you are basically helpless and don't know how to defeat or get past them, are really anxiety inducing. Your only option is basically to run or hide in the light, since they hate light and fire. There are boss fights in this game. They happen very rarely and most of them are not very challenging or creative. However, one of them, visually and difficulty wise, is absolutely amazing and took me a long time to master. I was even on the verge of rage quitting a few times. I consider A Plague Tale Innocence to be a visual work of pure art. It's not just that the visual presentation is on point. The attention to detail that has gone into the buildings, streets and landscapes is amazing. When you walk through the streets of a town in game, you never feel like something is out of place. The streets are narrow and maze-like and it's easy to get lost. Every corner is filled with details such as marble or stone statues of saints, kings, knights or famous priests. And these statues have been modeled with care by the developers to make them unique and stand out. You can really see how close all the buildings are to each other and how connected everything is. Leaves grow over some walls, the streets are either dusty or muddy, and yet the people don't want you there. You are a stranger arriving during dark times. No one trusts you. The townsfolk hide and lock their doors. From their windows, some of them yell at you, telling you to leave. You have no choice but to roam the idyllic and quiet, yet deserted town, hoping to find some help and maybe even some food. Since the game is taking place during a plague, cities are deserted and often run down. Quarantine laws are in effect and whole streets are marked as cursed. There will be whole blocks full of human and animal corpses, decaying and rotting away, flies buzzing around them. You can almost see the fog of sickness in the air and smell this awful stench. When you come across a structure that is filled with the bodies of hanged people, crows swarming above and having a feast, all while a full moon, coming from behind dark clouds, illuminates it all. To me at least, the scene is beautiful in a dark and sinister kind of way. There will be moments where you will have to move through a castle at night, while the moon shines through the cracks of the narrow streets and rooftops. As you continue down the street, you will come upon a church and a cemetery, riddled with the dead, all the while in the distance a subtle red glows in the sky and illuminates the library. The trees around the cemetery have no leaves, looking like dead skeletons. If you were to take a picture of this whole scene, you'd think it was something straight out of a classic vampire movie, and that the dead would rise out of their graves at any moment. There's an argument to be made that A Plague Tale Innocence could be considered true gothic art and horror, and I would absolutely agree with that. It is hard to create such landscapes and environments and make them look organic and natural, never making you doubt that this is real or could be real. It's not easy, especially in a title with so many fantastical elements. While playing A Plague Tale, I was constantly reminded of two other games that had a very similar look: Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. If you have ever played both or at least one of them, you will quickly see a lot of similarities both in architecture, atmosphere and city layout. There were moments where I just had to stop and take in the view, while remembering my time playing Dark Souls and almost feeling like I was in a parallel universe. Between the action, there are a lot of quiet moments that let you explore the streets or buildings you are in at the moment. And these building interiors are often decorated and full of detail. In one library level, there is a long hallway filled with carpets showing scenes from the Bible. But these scenes aren't just copy-pasted and done with low effort, no. They are very detailed and gorgeous. I loved slowly walking across this hallway and admiring these carpets, soaking in the story they were telling. It's this type of attention to detail and care that, in my opinion, qualifies a game to be art. Surprisingly, this game offers a lot of variety when it comes to landscapes. Not all are dark and gloomy. There are moments of sunshines, beautiful woods and even snow-covered fields. The game knows when to change the atmosphere so it won't feel like a pure ride of darkness and pessimism. Despite its dark story, it still has genuine heartfelt and kind moments, especially between Amicia and Hugo. A Plague Tale Innocence is a wild ride. I was expecting a great game going into it, based on all the footage and reviews I've seen on YouTube and Steam, but I never thought this game, which is by the way the first big title of Asobo, would end up being this emotional, detailed and varied. It's always great to have your expectations surpassed when playing a video game, and even though A Plague Tale has its faults, like the clunky controls or dumb AI, its story, visual presentation, acting and attention to detail are respectable and deserve a lot more attention.